What's going on, friends? Welcome back to another New World video. Today we're going to be talking about healing in New World and giving some pointers in terms of builds with attributes, weapon mastery, weapon choice, all of that good stuff. As always, with most of our videos, you will be able to scrub along to find the section that's relevant for you. We're going to be talking about healing in PvE, and with that we're going to be breaking it down for a beginner's guide, and then also advanced, or a beginner's build guide and an advanced build, and then we're going to be talking about PvP. I'm going to show you guys my settings for healing. We're going to be talking about healing with Flail and just general tips and tricks when it comes to healing in New World Aeternum. So the first thing I wanted to cover is some basics, because this will apply to pretty much every type of healing you do in New World Aeternum. The first things first is you pretty much always want to play in a light equip load. You are going to see sometimes healers play in medium or heavy, but I think like 99% of the time it's just not the play. If your focus is on healing, you want to be in a light equip load, because that gives you the 30% outgoing healing bonus. Now, the way that you get into a light equip load does vary depending on what pieces of armor that you are using. In a very standard setup without any artifacts, it would typically be a medium chest, light helmet, light gloves, light legs, and light boots. The reason why you take the medium chest instead of a light chest is because you'd still end up in a light equip load either way. But you can wear a medium chest and you're still in light, but you just have a bit extra armor. So that's a good breakdown. Featherweight is another fairly common artifact. You can get this fairly early on. And with that, you can actually rock a pair of heavy gloves and heavy boots, or heavy gloves and heavy helmet, or heavy helmet and heavy boots. You guys get the idea. Basically anything that isn't your legs. So you go light legs and then one other piece of light, and then the other two pieces are heavy with featherweight. We're also going to be showcasing a build with Aeternum leather pants, but I think we'll leave that section, for giving the breakdown of the armor pieces there. In terms of your stats, I think most of the time with a healer, 350 focus is the play. Focus is the only thing that's going to increase your healing, so you need to put points into focus in order to make sure that you have good outgoing healing, and I think most of the time it's correct to hit that 350 mark to maximize the healing, and getting the bonus there, which says reduce ability cooldowns by 20% when you pop your heart rune. So use a heart rune and your cooldowns can just be available immediately. A lot of the time, I think as a healer, you want to be aiming for at least 100 constitution. If you're feeling very confident, you can lower it, but for most people, I think 100 constitution or higher is the play. And then in PvP, spoilers, this is what we get set up here. You just want to play with as much constitution as possible after you get that 350 focus. Now, it's worth mentioning with those attribute sort of thresholds, I am using attribute food to get there. So right now I have toss stones on the go, increases my focus by 44. You can also eat roasted rabbit with seasoned vegetables, which gives you constitution by 48. The fancy version of this food, which is 48 focus, is called blackened lava bulb or something like that. But you definitely want to look into attribute food. I think this goes with pretty much all build guides, but using food to get the 44 extra attributes is basically like having an extra weapon on you. Something that you definitely want to make sure you stockpile, have a good amount of food in your inventory so you can eat that and get the extra bonuses, basically. Finally, one other thing that I want to talk about that's universal for healing is Sacred Ground. 99.9% of healer builds are going to be using Sacred Ground, and it's largely because of this Anointed upgrade over here. It says, while allies are in Sacred Ground, they gain 50% increased healing from non-consumables and lifesteal healing sources, which is basically all of your other heals. So if you have an ally standing in Sacred Ground, everything else heals them for 50% more. And a 50% increase in incoming healing is insane. I don't think there's anything else in the game that does that much in one go. With the Sword and Shield, you can get a 10% increase in healing. With Ankh, I think it's 25. That's the artifact amulet. You can get the Defender's Resolve thing. Let me take a look at the incoming healing bonus there. Yeah, that's 8%. On your weapon, it's like 12 or something. So no, 50% is such a massive, massive increase in healing that you pretty much always want to play this in both PvP and PvE. It's very, very powerful, very good at keeping your teammates alive. I think that covers all of the basics in terms of what you're going to be using pretty much all of the time. So with that being said, now let's jump into our PvE healer builds. So for the beginner PvE healer build, weapon choice remains the same. We are going to be playing Life Staff, and we're going to be playing with Void Gauntlet. The reason behind this is because Life Staff, I think it goes without saying, it is just the default healing weapon. There is no other weapon that can heal as much as Life Staff, not even remotely close. And then Void Gauntlet, we pick it up because it has access to really good buffs and debuffs with Oblivion, Essence Rupture, Orb of Decay, Scream, Tether, Void Blade. I mean, every single ability on the Void Gauntlet is really beneficial to your team and also for your own survivability as well. In terms of attributes for the beginner healer build, we're not focusing on intelligence at all. We're not looking to do damage here. You just want to heal, right? You're new to the game. You're not feeling too comfortable yet, so you're just going to prioritize on healing your team. And then once you got more comfortable and you know how to heal your team, then you can focus on dealing some damage, which is what the advanced build is going to be about. So if we're just looking to heal our team, we need focus, obviously. So prioritize getting to 350 focus. After that, you want to stay alive yourself because you can't do healing if you're dead. So then we're going to Constitution, bringing that up to 200. Then additional points can go into focus, bumping it up to 400, and then any additional points after that could go into Constitution. Now, technically, there isn't really much advantage going above 350 focus. If you did want to take some intelligence, even though it wouldn't give you any more healing, you could take some dexterity for crit chance, you could take some strength for light attack damage. But again, I just wanted to keep things simple here, so just focus and Constitution, the only things we need as a beginner healer. 350 focus minimum, and then prioritizing 200 con, and then you can kind of play around with the stats after that. You know, if you want a little bit more healing, you don't get much past 350 focus, but if you want some more, you can do that. And if you want more survivability, just go for Constitution. Ability-wise on the life staff, I opted to go for Sacred Ground, Splash of Light, and Beacon. Beacon could be Orb of Protection, Splash of Light could be Orb of Protection. Pretty much Sacred Ground is going to be your default go-to heal, and anything else you can play around with for what feels good. The reason why we went with this is because I feel like Sacred and Beacon, you just stick that on your tank and your melee, and then you use Splash of Light, and it just gets you out of a pinch, you know. It heals people up to 25 meters away, which if I'm not mistaken, that's the same range at which you can heal people with Sacred Ground. So this is your 25 meters over here. Let's just check that. Yeah, that's about 25 meters. So, you know, you just got a nice easy heal that tops everybody up. And it does remove debuffs, and it can give you back a little bit of mana as well. The only problem if you do choose to switch out Splash of Light for Orb of Protection, which is what we do in the advanced healer build, you're going to find it very hard to pick up Divine Blessing, but we'll cover that later on. Other passives that I pretty much always recommend you pick up are Bend, Light, and Protect to Strength. Both of these give you an outgoing healing buff. Things that are flexible in here that you could play around with if you wanted to try some different things. You can drop Speed of Light in favor of Glowing Focus. You can drop Protector's Touch in favor of, you know, again, Glowing Focus, Balance, Spirits United, kind of whatever it feels like. So I think of all of the things, Protector's Touch and Speed Light are probably the least needed. Some people choose to play without Intensify, but again, if you're going to be focusing on healing, then just getting a few heavy attacks in there to increase your outgoing healing seems like a good idea. For the Void Gauntlet, again, there are a lot of different options you can play with here. I opted to go for Oblivion. This is a 15% damage increase on your teammates, and if you have the Nullifying Oblivion perk, you can also strip away buffs from the enemy, which can be kind of relevant, and it reduces the cooldown. Essence Rupture feels like it's a super good debuff to have, or a buff, I don't know what you want to call it. Basically, you apply Essence Rupture to an enemy, and then every time one of your teammates hit them, they heal for 20% of their weapon damage, basically. So it's kind of like Lifesteal, but not quite. Really, really good. One thing you need to be careful of with Essence Rupture is if you take the upgrade, this can only apply every so often. This can like apply with literally every single attack. This is only applying, I think it's like every 0.1 or 0.2 of a second or something, so it still applies fairly frequently, or maybe it's every second. I'll have to look it up. We can get an editor's note on the screen, but Essence Rupture, just a really, really good debuff. You just stick it on the enemy, and then anytime somebody hits that enemy, especially a boss, they get healed for a pretty good amount. Orb of Decay is another way you can get some healing. You fire it out on the way back. You can detonate it for a burst of healing. You just have to press the ability again. I do like Orb of Decay because it applies Rend as well. It puts Disintegrate on them, but you could play Tether in place of it, or Scream. And then we've already covered Oblivion. So yeah, there are options here. I'd say you should always go with Oblivion. Just put it down next to your DPS players to increase their damage. While you have Oblivion down, you can attack people and apply Weaken to them as well. And it gives you stamina regen. And stamina regen to anybody inside it, which is nice for your tank and other players. Like I say, Tether is also a good option here to apply Weaken to the enemy and empower you, which is less important in this build, but also worth considering. In terms of the ultimates, I pretty much always like to go for Void Caller. The only way you're really going to be able to trigger Void Caller is if you land a Scream on a big pack of enemies, or you land Orb of Decay. You'll get it more consistently with Void Blade, but again, we're not Void Blading with the beginner healer build, because it's just a little bit too spooky for new players, so instead you just want to pop Orb in a big pack of enemies, and that will likely get you the Void Caller passive, which is just a little healing bubble around you. In terms of the gear, this is going to be pretty similar to the advanced healer build. You want to stay in a light equip load. There's a bunch of different ways you can do this, but I think one of the safest ways to do it, especially as a beginner, is to take Featherweight, the artifact chest piece. We'll have links to all of these in the description down below, including like actual build guides as well. I think it's worth mentioning at this point. On Discord, if I haven't already covered it in the video at this point, we do have our New World build section. So there will be a link to this in the description down below. And right now we're looking at the Sage build, although this is only the advanced version. So the beginner version, which we're looking at right now, perhaps we'll add it in on here as well. But just to make you guys aware that you can get like the written version of this guide over on Discord, links in the description down below. But it will also include where to get all of these gear pieces, or most of them that we talk about here as well. So featherweight, it's a chest piece that doesn't weigh anything. We can demonstrate that by taking it off, and you see my character's equip load doesn't change at all, so that's pretty nice. And what that allows us to do is get away with running a couple pieces of heavy armor. So in this build, I have some Frigid Dawn boots, which are really good. You can make these at the Gypsum Kiln, or you can get them from Mutated Glacial Tarn, but they have Enchanted Ward and Elemental Aversion. Really good damage reduction. And then I've got a random helmet that I found from Dynasty Shipyard here. Enchanted Ward, Slash Conditioning, Nullifying Oblivion. In terms of perks to prioritize on your armor, Refreshing is a must-have. You know, you want to get that cooldown reduction so you can use your heals more often. And then Enchanted Ward is kind of a must-have as well, because it reduces all of the damage you take from light and heavy attacks, which is the majority of damage in the game, including in PvE. Enemies do occasionally use abilities, but surprisingly, most of the time, the way that enemies' damage is coded into the game, it is a light and heavy attack, so Enchanted Ward is really, really good for reducing incoming damage. Other pieces of gear I got here, I just got some health, refreshing, Enchanted Ward, not even sure where I got these from, and some Azoth Crystal Gloves, which are just Enchanted Ward refreshing. Third perk doesn't do anything here, but again, you don't have to have full BIS all the time, especially for this beginner build. It will do just fine. Upgrade-wise in featherweight, I went for Slash Conditioning. Health would also be a decent option here, or Thrust Conditioning as well. In terms of my weapons, I'm playing with Life Taker, the Artifact Void Gauntlet. This is pretty easy to get. Third upgrade, I went for Putrefying Scream, but obviously for the beginner build, you don't really need that. You could just go for Disdained Infliction, or you could even just not upgrade it at all. I don't think it's super necessary. This is basically just here to give us access to the Void Gauntlet abilities, and it also means our Life Staff attacks apply Disintegrate, which is really nice, because we can then rend the enemy. Disintegrate, for those of you not aware, is what you apply with the Void Blade, so it's a damage over time effect, and it rends the enemy's armor, which increases the damage that they take. You can apply up to 3 stacks of Disintegrate. One thing that's handy as well that is maybe not super, you wouldn't take it into consideration, is whenever you're landing the damage over time effect, every time the damage over time effect ticks, you will get some Heart Rune charge. So you can use Life Taker to get your Heart Rune charge faster, so you can use your Heart Rune more often. Which, you know, is pretty good for you. It's also good because whenever you use your Heart Rune, you reduce the cooldown of your abilities, so you can pop your Heart Rune to quickly knock a large chunk of cooldown off your abilities so you can use them again immediately. The Life Staff I'm using in this build is the Hoplite Life Staff. This comes from the Hive of Gorgons, so you can get this with Blessed and Fortifying Sacred Ground guaranteed. You might get unlucky, so it can either drop from the final boss or you can craft it at the Gypsum Kiln with Hive of Gorgons token. In fact, let's just fast cut to what that looks like. So you can find these crafting stations in all of the high-level cities, so Brimstone Sands, Ebonscale Reach, Great Cleave, Shattered Mountain, Eden Grove, you guys get the idea. If you interact with the Gypsum Kiln, you'll see a bunch of options. Now, what you see in here does depend on what you have in your inventory, so if you don't have any materia, you won't see options to craft these things. And likewise, if we go right down to the bottom, you can find the Hoplite stuff, but if you don't have Hive of Gorgons tokens, you get these from completing the Hive of Gorgons raid, killing the final boss, then you won't see these either. But if you are able to clear the raid, then you'll have some tokens. If you have enough tokens, you'll be able to make the Life Staff, although likely if you're interested in playing healer, you'll probably already have received a Hoplite Life Staff, because it does seem to drop fairly frequently from the final boss. But yeah, this is a pretty good Life Staff. This is probably going to be your best Life Staff for most builds, so this is what you want to work towards if you don't already have it. You can either craft it with the tokens, or you can just do kill Broodmother Medusa while you have a Life Staff and pray that she gives you one of these. Alternate options, if you're not able to do the raid, if you're just not ready for it, you can make the Ritual of Hereafter. It's not a bad Life Staff, so that is this one here. This does require dense Lazarus materia, so you'll need to run Mutated Lazarus in order to get enough materia, or you could just get lucky and it will drop in Mutated Lazarus as well. It has Fortifying Sacred Ground and Refreshing Move, so you might need to recraft this and put Blessed onto it. Again, for those of you not aware, you can recraft named items in your inventory. Let's see if I can demonstrate that here real quick. So for instance, I have this Privateer's Heirloom. It's 700 gear score, but it could be lower gear score. It's always guaranteed to have Hearty and Slash damage on it, so if I unlock it and then I go into the Gypsum Kiln, I will see the option to recraft it here. So Hearty Slash damage, and as you can see, the random perk that was assigned to it was Sacred, which isn't ideal for this ring. So I can go ahead and choose to change that Sacred perk to something else, and then I'll get a Hearty Slash damage infected, or whatever else I want. So in the case of Ritual Hereafter, if you don't get it, you can recraft it, but you will need Chromatic Seals and Jewelry Matrix. So again, sadly, there is no like super cheap way to do this, guys. It is kind of expensive. But just prioritize getting a blessed and refreshing move Lifestaff from the beginning. Another option that you have in here as well to make you guys aware of is the Fire of Life. That's this one here. You can make this with Empyrean Forge materia, dense Empyrean Forge materia. And then there's also the Corrupt Progenitor's Lifestaff as well. If you don't fancy doing dungeons at all, you can potentially find a group that's running Merc Guard. You'll see this quite often advertised in recruitment chat. They'll usually type in plus or X Merc. So European servers, we use the plus symbol. Over on North America, it's usually X, but plus or X basically means invite me, and then the word after is what they want to be invited for. So plus or X Merc would be plus, like, invite me for Merc God, and then you get a group that runs through Merc God. And if you get lucky, one of the enemies in here could drop the Corrupt Progenitor's Lifestaff. Alternatively, you could solo farm it from, there's an enemy over here, I can't remember, his Fay or something like that. And that guy can drop the Corrupt Progenitor's Lifestaff, but it's most likely going to be a very low gear score, like a 630 gear score, so again, you will need to upgrade that in the Gypsum Kiln, like I've done with the Privateer's Heirloom. For more information on upgrading items, check out the link up in the top right of the video, or in the description down below. Gem-wise in the Lifestaff, by the way, you always want to put a diamond. Diamond increases your outgoing healing. It's just a freebie, so always slot a diamond. If you want to get advanced, you can go for a rune glass diamond. This applies a little bit of extra damage over time. It says that you do less healing, 12% damage in outgoing healing, compared to a cut pristine diamond, which is 15% damage in outgoing healing. But after extensive testing, I can confirm that it doesn't actually reduce the outgoing healing. But anyway, the TLDR on the Lifestaff, blessed and refreshing move, and then ideally Fortifying Sacred Ground is the third perk for your PvE healer build. Heart Rune wise, there's so many different options you can go for here. Sacred Ground, sorry, not Sacred Ground, Stone Form is probably your safest bet, which you get from Lazarus, and then again, you can upgrade these bad boys in the stone cutting table, so you need to take the blue version of a Heart Rune in your bag, take it to the stone cutting table, you'll be able to make a purple version, and then you can make the purple version to legendary. It does require quite a lot of materials, but Stone Form, get the blue version from Lazarus, and upgrade it to the Stalwart version. I like to play Firestorm as well, just because it weakens the enemy, it empowers your teammates, and it removes damage over time effects, which is quite nice. And then finally, moving over to the jewelry, your amulet is going to be something that ideally you want to be changing depending on what sort of mutation you go into. So I was just doing Ennead. Ennead was a Void mutation this week, so I wore a Void Protection amulet. If I was to then get into, let's see, what do we have again this week? I think we have Empyrean Forge with Frost, so I could go with a Frost Protection amulet. We have Savage Divide with Nature, so in that case, I would want to get a Nature Protection amulet like this one here. So yeah, trying to get a bunch of different amulets with the Protection perk is going to be the long-term goal, but in the meantime, one sort of tack that you could take if you didn't want to change all your gear, if you just wanted a one-size-fits-all, I would say prioritize getting Slash Conditioning on your armor. So you get Slash Conditioning and Slash Conditioning. This is going to reduce your incoming slash damage. And then you can go for Opal Gems in the armor. Opal Gems give you less elemental damage, so they cover all of the elements. So Fire, Frost, Nature, Void, Arcane, Lightning. So Opal Gems in all of your gear. And then your amulet, you can just go for a Thrust Protection amulet. And that way you're covered against Thrust, you're covered against Slash, and you're covered against all of the elements. And that kind of covers, other than strike damage, which you don't see too often, you kind of got to be covered. So if you do want to get, you know, a bit lazy, you just want to be covered against everything, Slash Conditioning, Opal Gems, which cover all elements, and then for the weakness to Thrust, which is like bows and muskets, you can just go with a Thrust Protection amulet, and I think that is a sort of nice setup. But realistically, you want to get into the swing of like changing your amulet depending on what mutation damage type you're going up against. Ring-wise, start off by prioritizing Hearty and Sacred. In the long run, you really want to get Hearty, Sacred, Healing Breeze, but it is expensive and tricky to get a ring with these three perks. I got really lucky with a crafted ring here. I locked in Hearty and Healing Breeze, and then I get Sacred as the third perk, but just prioritize Hearty and Sacred to start with. And then jewelry-wise, if you haven't already, I'd recommend trying to pick up Endless Thirst. You can get this from doing Mutated Savage Divide. By the time this video goes out, there might not be a lot of time left in, you know, this particular rotation. They do change every Tuesday, but getting the earring from Savage Divide is a good idea. And then putting Refreshing as the third perk, I just think it, you know, making sure you have that full Refreshing stack. But you could go for Refreshing Toast or Regenerating. I think both of those are not terrible ideas as well. All right, I think that pretty much covers the sort of beginner healer build. Let's move over to advanced now. For the more advanced version of our PvE healer build, things are going to be similar in that we're still playing Lifestaff and Void Gauntlet, and for the same reasons that we covered with the beginner section, Lifestaff is our best healing weapon, and Void Gauntlet is kind of like the second best healing weapon in terms of the support that it provides. However, the way that we play our attributes and weapon mastery is going to change slightly. In terms of attributes, we're getting a bit more aggressive here. We're still keeping that 350 focus for the maximum healing, but we're now dropping quite a lot of constitution in favor of intelligence. We're getting 10 mana on critical hit. We're also getting elemental damage. We're getting base, light, and heavy elemental attacks. Now, you guys might be wondering, well, Baggins, you said earlier that intelligence doesn't benefit your healing. That's true, but again, with 350 focus, our healing should be more than fine. We can now focus on doing some damage, and that's where the intelligence comes in from. We also have 100 constitution, 25 dexterity for the critical hit chance, and 25 strength for the light attack damage. These do benefit like the light attacks of the Void Gauntlet and the Life Staff, so even though Void Gauntlet and the Life Staff don't scale off of strength or dexterity at all, it still provides us with damage specifically at the 25, and technically 50 and 50 strength would also work as well, but I think it's kind of unnecessary. Some people take this build even further. They drop down to like 50 constitution. They go up to 250 intelligence. I've even seen cases where people go 300 focus and 300 intelligence. It really depends how hardcore you want to be, but I think this is a fairly passable grade here. You guys might be wondering, how do we have so many attributes? We'll get into that in a moment, but it's due to our artifact choice. With weapon mastery on the life staff, we're opting for the all AoE healing build. So we have Sacred Ground, Orb of Protection, and Beacon. The reason why we do this is because we can play more with the Void Blade, and I guess we'll also go over to the weapon mastery for the Void Gauntlet as well. We are now playing with Void Blade. We've still got Oblivion, and then we have a 4 ability setup here. Now, this might look a bit unusual. Why do we have 4 abilities when we can only slot 3 of them, Baggins? Well, that's when you start the dungeon, when you're just clearing out the minions, the trash, whatever you want to call them, the non-boss enemies. You basically play with this setup here. And then when it comes to the bosses, Scream doesn't really do anything, so instead we switch over to Rupture. For all the reasons that we covered in the beginner section, Rupture is a really good heal. Oblivion is a must-have, I feel like, in all builds. Just again, the 15% empower, the weaken on enemies, the stamina. It's just a really, really good ability. And then Void Blade is in here because now we're actually going to focus on doing some damage. So the way this build typically works is we put down our heals on the tank and on our DPS. So we do something like this. We want to dodge roll before we do that because we get the Ben Light. Newbie mistake there from me. And then we go in, we put down our Oblivion, we put Essence Scripture on the boss if it's a boss, and then we just start swinging with our Void Blade. And we want to keep doing this until our Sacred Ground comes off of cooldown, or until our teammates really need heals. And then we just go ahead, reapply the heals, get back in there, and start swinging with the Void Blade. You'll find that as you hit the enemy with the Void Blade, your mana is going to come back pretty quickly because of the 200 intelligence bonus. You get mana on critical hit. If you're hitting the enemy in the back, it's a guaranteed critical hit. But that's effectively the rotation there. Just dodge roll, Sacred, Orb, Beacon, and then switch over, Oblivion, Rupture, or Scream, and then start swinging with the Void Blade, getting your damage in until your teammates need heals, or if things look a little bit dicey, you know, you might want to hang back and just spam with the Life Staff for a little bit. It's kind of, this comes down to player experience when it's playing this build. You know, you don't always want to be going for damage, you don't always want to be going for healing. You kind of just got to play it by ear and or by eye, whatever, and apply what your team needs at that moment in time. But try to keep Oblivion down all the time, try to keep Essence Scripture on the boss all the time, and then any spare moments in there, you just want to be Void Blading for the big damage it can provide. One thing you might think is a bit unusual about the skill tree is we do not have Divine Blessing. The reason why that is the case is because we go and pick up the heals that we want over here, so we grab this, and then we want to take Orb. When you take Orb, you need to fully max it out, because without Aegis, it just doesn't really do anything. Beacon always wants to be down to this point as well to make it last 5 seconds longer, and then we always want to pick up here. And the problem is, once we've sort of locked in these points over here, we only have 3 points left to play with. So if we do this, we go this, and let's say we get this as well, we don't have a point left over here. The only way that we can fix that is by dropping like Protective Strength to pick it up, or dropping Radiance Blessing, or dropping Aegis, but none of these really you want to drop. You kind of need to keep everything over here, so we just don't have enough points to pick up Divine Blessing, so we play without it. But to be honest, you know, again, I think if you have Sacred Orb and Beacon on top of your team, you're going to be pretty good anyway. One thing to be aware of with this build is it doesn't play too well if you have a bunch of ranges. So if everybody in your team is playing like Fire Staff and Bow, you might find it a bit hard to get value out of your all AoE healing build. This is sort of more of a meta setup, and in the meta of like Mutated Dungeons at least, people typically play all melee. They stack up on top of the tank. I think this could be pretty good in the second boss of Hive of Gorgons as well, with Typhon in the Sandworm. Typically everybody's just all stacked up doing like big rapier damage or something like that. and you can get in there and just sort of help them out with the Void Blade and the Oblivion. So that's the setup there, and that's how this build plays. It's, like I say, it's a more aggressive version where you spend more time Void Blading and less time kind of just, you know, spamming heals. Gear-wise, the setup here I've opted to go for is the Attuned Leather Pants, just because of the sheer amount of stats these provide. This is what was allowing us to get away with all of these attributes that we saw. Like, we have so many attributes here because we have 725 gear score Attuned Leather Pants. They give us 11 to all attributes and then 45 to our main attribute. So this alone is providing us with 56 focus, which is pretty insane. And then the build here, of course, we want to be in a light equip load like we do all the time. Always light equip load when you're healing, because you get that healing bonus, which we covered at the start of the video. Other things that I have in here, we've got some Enchanted Board Refreshing Boots. Third perk here is kind of dead. We don't have a best setup for this one either. We have Enchanted Board Refreshing, Nature Harnessing again, kind of a waste. Got a really good chest piece here from the Sandworm. This has Keen on it, which is super unusual. Enchanted Board Shirking Energy. This is going to be a pretty hard piece to get. And then I've just got a crappy helmet that I bought off the trading post for 500 gold. Because again, Enchanted Board Refreshing. These are still our priority perks that we want here. Ideally, I would have Keen Beacon, and ideally I would have Mending Protection here as well, just to give our team a little bit more oomph. Nullifying Oblivion wouldn't be a bad call, just for the cooldown reduction, but again, I think the healing is kind of good. It's just all of those additional perks when you really want to build in. If you want to make a best version of this build, getting Mending Protection, getting Keen Beacon would be pretty big in terms of just increasing your healing output and increasing the crit chance of your team. Weapon-wise, we still keep the Hoplite Lifestaff. If you don't have the Hoplite Lifestaff, again, you can play Ritual of Hereafter. You can play Fire of Life. If you didn't see those in the beginner section, you can scrub back and find that one. We're still keeping a diamond, and ideally a Rune Glass diamond. And then weapon choice, you can either play Life Taker if you want. Life Taker is still fine in this build, but I'm actually playing with Ritual Blessing right now. This is crafted from the Gypsum Kiln in the same way that we craft the Fire of Life or the Ritual of Hereafter. Again, check the beginner section if you missed that. You can also just get this to drop from Lazarus, and I think it has Attunement and Voracious Blade locked in by default, or it might be Attunement and Vicious, but these are the three perks that I play on here. Voracious Blade might be a bit overkill, because honestly, if you're standing in your heals, you probably don't need that healing anyway, so you could just play Refreshing Move, or any other perk that, you know, fits your fancy. Putrefying Scream would also be a decent option. And then we have this setup here where we have a Rune Glass and we have a Damage Conversion Gem, and the reason behind that is because of our jewelry, so we're playing with Elemental Band. This is, again, a bit unconventional, because usually you want to have a hearty, sacred healing breeze ring. But again, this is for comfortable, confident healers who don't need no hearty, sacred healing breeze. So instead, we're playing with Elemental Band, which comes from the Hive of Gorgon's final boss, Broodmother Medusa. And this says, whenever you hit an enemy with an elemental damage attack, you gain a 4% in power for 6 seconds. So right now, this Void Gauntlet alone is doing nature damage. It's also doing void damage. So we get nature damage from the attunement. We've got void damage from the fact that it's a Void Gauntlet. We're converting 50% of the damage to arcane. So we have arcane, nature, void, and then we also have a Rune Glass applying lightning. So we have arcane, nature, void, and lightning. So we're getting 4 different stacks of empower from this, which is giving us quick maths. That's a 16% empower. And then if we can hit them with the life staff, actually, I haven't really set this up well, because this should also be like fire damage or frost damage on here as well. We'd be able to get 1 additional stack, but you guys can see how it's pretty disgusting. Now, full disclosure, Elemental Affinity says it's not supposed to trigger off of attunement. It currently is, which is a little bit busted. So at some point, Amazon Game Studios might fix that at some point, but they don't seem to be rushing to do that one. But just so you're aware, if you do lead into this build, I think at some point they will make it so that it doesn't trigger off attunement, but it doesn't seem to be happening anytime soon. Amulet-wise, at this point, we really want to be leaning into that knowledge or that concept of wearing the right protection amulet for the right dungeon. So again, I got another Ennead here. This was an Ennead with Void. Sadly, only M1, so we couldn't really show the full potential of the build, but yeah, just getting a Void Protection Amulet for Void mutations, Flame Protection Amulet for Flame mutations, Frost Protection for Frost. You guys get the idea. Like, you want the corresponding amulet for the corresponding mutation you go in, especially as you get into M2 and M3. That's a really big deal. And then finally, Earring here. We have Refreshing Toast, Regenerating, and Empowering Toast. Earring's kind of, you know, it could be whatever, really. I don't think there's any super must-have perks here. I think Refreshing or Refreshing Toast, Empowering Toast, Fortifying Toast, all of those are probably the perks that are most desirable. Some people say you shouldn't play Regenerating because you're going to take aggro from the tank, but I feel like tanks, they've got it pretty easy these days. They just need to heavy attack and they'll permanently hold aggro, so Yeah, I wouldn't really worry too much about the regenerating tech. One other thing, as you would get more advanced with your healer builds, you want to maybe look at coatings and ward potions as well. Ward potions reduce your incoming damage from a particular enemy type. So in this case, I had an ancient ward potion and I had an ancient coating, so I could do more damage to ancients. Most of the enemies in any ad are ancients. There are quite a few corrupted as well, but ancients covers most of it. If I got into Empyrean Forge, it would be a human ward potion. If I got into Savage Divide, it would be a Beast Ward Potion, Beast Coating. You guys get the idea. I'll link in the description down below New World Database where you can see all of the different enemy types per dungeon. That will help you out quite a bit. But I think that pretty much covers the advanced healer build there. Again, the whole concept is just put down the heals, switch over Void Blade, put your debuffs on, and then start swinging until you need to start healing again. Make sure you do have Enchanted Ward for this setup. It's really going to help with the reduced incoming damage, and I would say prioritize that for refreshing for the cooldown reduction. And now it's time to talk about our healer build for PvP. So this is for 3v3 Arena, Outpost Rush, Influence Races, and even Wars as well. Finally, our weapon choice is going to be a little bit different. We're of course running the Life Staff as always for all the reasons we previously covered, but the secondary weapon we opt to go for is Rapier. Now you still can play with Void Gauntlet, and I think both builds that we outlined in the beginner and the advanced PvE healer build, they can work in PvP as well. Scream, Blade, Oblivion, Orb of Decay, they all have relevance in PvP. Right now, we're just going to talk about like the standard healer build, which just emphasizes on healing rather than dealing damage. And the reason why we play Rapier is not because, you know, it gives us some sort of crazy damage boost or something like that. It doesn't really buff our team. It's kind of a selfish weapon. We just use it to escape. So if an opponent gets close to us, we can sort of dodge out of the way. We can dash away. We can even reflect some damage and hit them back with the stun with the riposte as well. So Rapier is pretty much just a secondary weapon you switch to get out of danger, and then you switch back over to the Life Staff so you can continue to do some healing. With that being said, let's take a look at the attributes. So we are playing with 350 focus, 250 con. Again, we're not really focusing on doing any damage here. We just want to heal our teammates and we want to stay alive ourselves. This time, I do think that taking a very high amount of Constitution is definitely worthwhile. I would still go to 350 focus because the heals matter, and also getting the 20% cooldown reduction when you use a Heart Rune can be pretty big. I think it might even be possible to get to 350, 300, and I don't know, actually, maybe with full 725. Not that we really need 300 con anyway, but yeah, you want to get 350 focus and then as much Constitution as you can. That's basically it. So pretty straightforward with the stats there. 350 and as much con as you can take. In terms of weapon mastery, with the Life Staff, there's a couple different ways you can play this. So this is a pretty standard build that I think we see played in War. If you're going to queue up in Outpost Rush with a 5-stack, so if you're playing with your friends or 3v3 Arena with your friends, this is going to be a pretty good build. We take Sacred Ground for all the reasons we normally take Sacred Ground. Anointed, really good incoming healing, Fortifying Sacred Ground, all of this stuff. It's just a really, really good heal. Divine Embrace is a very powerful single target heal when you specifically have a perk called Refreshing Divine Embrace. So Refreshing Divine Embrace says when a target's below 50% health, it basically has no cooldown. It's really, really strong. So you can spam Divine Embrace back to back to back to back on targets who are below 50%, and it can even bounce and heal somebody else as well. So Divine Embrace is just an incredibly powerful single target heal. You know, if somebody's below 50, you can bring them back up to full. If it doesn't bring them back up to full, then you can heal them again with like a no cooldown. Super, super strong. And then Splash of Light, this is, I think this one can be changed depending on the sort of situation you're going into. So again, if you're playing in a pre-made group and you know you're going to be around your teammates all the time, you can do this. But if you're playing with randoms, then you might want to go for Beacon and pick up the Speed of Light upgrade instead. But Splash of Light is pretty awesome because it removes debuffs, which is pretty nice. You're going to get a lot of debuffs on you in PvP with Rend and Weaken and Slow and Disease. So being able to remove those from you and your teammates is pretty nice. There's also a perk you can get on your armor called Purity of Light. Don't think I have it right now, but Purity of Light says that when you remove a debuff, you heal for an extra amount, which is also pretty good as well. So you can just make the heal even stronger. All the other passives we covered in the previous, in like the PvE section, but these are the sort of passives you typically want to go for. Intensify, you could replace this with Balance. Sometimes it is tricky to get those heavy attacks out. But yeah, that's our healer build there. So I would say Sacred Ground, Divine Embrace all the time, and then Splash of Light could be changed out for Beacon. One thing that's worth mentioning here, for those of you playing with a controller, I do find Divine Embrace is very tricky to target teammates with. We're going to show my settings later on, but I use the keybinds to target specific members, but I don't think you have that option. So if I go to, just give a glimpse here, I go to keyboard and mouse, and then I go down to target group member. I've got these set up here so I can target specific group members. With controller binding, though, I don't think you get an option to target your group members, do you? So if that is the case, then you might want to just stick to Sacred, Splash, and then Beacon. That might be the play for you there if you are playing with a controller. Although realistically, if you can find some way to make Divine Embrace work and regularly target your teammates, it's really, really good. Moving over to the Rapier Mastery Tree, we're just taking everything that's defensive here. So again, Rapier is not really used for damage. So we've got Evade, fully spec'd out, so we can get some stamina, get some movement speed. We got Flesh, again, just because it's another movement ability. And then we have Riposte, which can put a pretty long stun on the enemy as well. So you just want to be using these to get out of the way of danger, basically. Nothing else really too important over here. I guess taking things that give you cooldown reduction or movement speed, also worth considering as well. Taking a look at my gear, this is far from optimal, but something to be aware of in PvP is, at least in War and Outpost Rush, low gear score items get scaled up to 700, so these look like pretty, you know, kind of crappy gloves, right? 639 gear score. These become 700 gear score in 3v3 Arena and Outpost Rush. You can see here, gear score scaling increases the gear score of all equipment below 700 to 700. Some people have asked me, does this go the other way? Does 725 get downgraded? It does not. But yeah, you can rock some fairly low gear score items and just have them bumped up to 700. I'm playing with Featherweight, just like I do with the PvP healer build. The PvE healer build, the beginner healer build, just to give us some extra armor here. And then we have a heavy gloves and heavy boots. Got my Frigid Dawn boots, very good. I prioritize going for Enchanted Ward and Slash Conditioning. Still find there's quite a lot of hatchets out there. They are a bit of a dying breed now after the changes, but I think these two perks help a lot with taking less damage from hatchets. As you can see, we've also got some slash damage absorption here as well. We've got some light legs, and we got a light helmet. This is sort of the breakdown. Again, whenever you're playing in a light equip load, you want to be just under the threshold for medium, because then you can maximize the amount of armor you can get while staying in light. So yeah, Featherweight, light helmet, heavy gloves, light legs, heavy boots. Perks-wise, ideally we would have Shirking Energy over here. We still want to get that full refreshing. This would be better as Slash Conditioning. And ideally we would have that Purity of Light perk that we talked about as well, and Fortifying Sacred Ground. So I think the sort of dream setup here would be to get Fortifying Sacred Ground instead of Health. This would have Purity of Light on it, and then this one would be Slash Conditioning. Weapons-wise, I like to play Living Mind. You can get this from the Well of Fortune in Cutlass Keys. So if you go to Cutlass Keys, you'll find the Well of Fortune right about here. In there, you can buy a 710 gear score version called the Living Mind, and then you can upgrade it to 725 and choose the final perks. It's the sort of same system as you can with the Gypsum Kiln, where you can upgrade it to 725. It requires doubloons and the Gold Curse Coconut. Rapier-wise, honestly, it doesn't really matter what you run. Right now, I'm using Finisher just because I don't really have anything else. Technically Finisher, you know, we do more damage to a target that's bleeding. We're not really looking to do damage in this build, but it doesn't hurt. I think the dream Finisher, or the dream Rapier, would be Keen Speed, and Sundering Riposte. Getting Keen Speed on your Rapier just to give you more movement speed whenever you crit. So if you like dash through some enemies and you hit one of them with a critical, and then you get the zoomies to go out the other side, that would kind of help you. But it's not really necessary. Living Mind is definitely the go-to PvP life staff. And again, I'm still prioritizing Blessed, Refreshing Move, and then we talked about Refreshing Divine Embrace and how good that is. Heart Room-wise, Stone Form, definitely the best option to go for on PvP just to keep you alive, so go Stone Form. We talked about how you can get that in the PvE section. And then jewelry-wise, we're still keeping that Hearty Sacred Healing Breeze Ring. We're not going with Elemental Band this time, it's just a little bit too aggressive. I play with Endless Thirst with the Refreshing upgrade on it. And I like to go for a Flame Protection Amulet. I feel like there's a big rise in the number of fire staffs I'm seeing these days, now that Hatchet has had a bit of a nerf. But you might want to take an amulet with a protection perk relevant for the sort of damage you find you're dying to. So if it's still loads of Hatchets on your server, or when you're in your games, then you might want to keep that Slash Protection Amulet. Got an example of one over here I just found. Perhaps you want to go for a Void Protection Amulet. I do think there is an increase in the number of Void Gauntlets out there as well. But that covers the gear. The general playstyle is basically just going to be to, you know, drop heals on the point near your teammates or whatever if somebody's getting focused, and then hit them with the Divine Embrace, top them up, and then use Splash of Light. Splash of Light's pretty nice because you can like sort of heal people while you're behind line of sight. It's got that 25-meter radius. You will need to make sure that you play with targeted healing with this setup, by the way, so is worth mentioning. Splash of Light, Divine Embrace without using targeted healing is almost impossible to land, so gameplay, and then we go to healing settings. Yeah, you will need targeted healing on. If you have targeted healing off, you have to sort of try and like land your heal remotely. If somebody's on the move, it's almost impossible to do, like to try and get that to land like on your teammates. So yeah, make sure that you have targeted healing on. And again, I'll go over all my settings in just a moment here so that you can get this lock on here. And then, can I do that? There we go. We can get this lock on. Makes it so that you're not going to miss the heal because it follows them as they move along. It's a big deal there. I don't think it would be fair to do a healing build video without at least touching on the Flail and the Life Staff and how that works for a healer setup. A lot of you guys have asked, well, Baggins, you know, there's another weapon that scales off of focus. It's the Flail. How does that perform as a healing weapon? The answer is pretty good. I don't think it's as strong as Void Gauntlet. Again, Void Gauntlet just has some insanely powerful abilities. Everything in here is pretty awesome with weakens and empowers and rends and giving your teammates lifesteal and giving them like a pretty much permanent damage increase. It's just a really, really good weapon to pair with Life Staff in both PvE and PvP, but the Flail is not bad. It provides some pretty good stuff in here. One thing that I think the Flail does better than the Void Gauntlet is it's very good at applying Weaken due to all of the impairment stacks that it applies. So impairment deals 10% weapon damage and weakens the target, reducing their damage by 10%. So it's a 30% weaken there. And if you play with Power Stone, you can get another 20% weaken. So we can hit the, I think the weaken cap is 50% if I'm not mistaken. So we can hit the weaken cap just with our abilities and Power Stone. Power Stone's also a fairly easy artifact to pick up as well. You can get it from doing soul trials. These are pretty casual and you'll probably get it within like 2-3 soul trials. So easy pickup. In terms of upgrades for Power Stone, I think you either go for a weapon perk. I'm thinking Powerful Eruption. If you're playing PvP, this Burdening Smite is really, really good in PvP, but it only works in PvP. Or you can just go for Attunement. You can get like Fire Attunement, Flame Attunement, Frost Attunement, something like that would be pretty solid as well. Armor setup wise, if you're going to play with Flail, I think you do want to play with the shield as well, just because these perks do stack. So you can stack the perks over here with the perks on the Flail. So we're going to play with Featherweight most of the time. I think that's the correct play. If you don't have Featherweight, you just have to go full everything light, full light armor, so you can wear a round shield. But if you do have Featherweight, you can get away with full medium other than one piece. So one piece of your gear needs to be light, and that can either be your helmet, your gloves, or your boots, and then you wear medium legs. So in my case, I've got a medium helmet, medium gloves, medium boots, and then I've got medium legs rather, and then I've got light boots. But I could do medium boots, medium gloves, light helmet, or I could do medium... You guys get the idea. I don't need to go through all the possible variations. Basically, one piece light that isn't the legs, and everything else can be medium. Attribute setup for this, I would play with 100 strength, 350 focus, and 150 constitution. And honestly, I think this will cover you across both PvE and PvP. We want to take some strength so we can do a bit of damage with the Flail. Again, if you're just using the Flail as a utility weapon, you could just go full focus and con like we do with the Void Gauntlet build, the PvE beginner build for the Void Gauntlet. Just go like lots of focus, lots of con. But if you want to get in there and get aggressive, then I think it's worth taking some strength. You get the physical damage, get the heavy attack damage, get the light attack damage, because Flail does scale primarily with strength, 90% off of strength. So this is the attribute setup. Ability-wise, we did leak it a little bit. You would play the same setup that you do in the PvE Advanced Guide, where you effectively just, you know, put down your heals, dodge roll again before I apply the heals to get the bend light, and then you just go in and you start doing Flail stuff. So if you haven't seen the PvE Advanced section of this video, check it out, because it would play in the same sort of way. Put heals down and then switch over to the Flail and start doing Flail stuff until your heals are off cooldown, and then back to the Flail again to keep on flailing. Ability-wise for the Flail, I like to play the full left side skill tree. If you were going to play in PvP or you wanted a bit more variety, you could look to drop Arcane Eruption and pick up Barrage, or you could pick up Trip, or you could pick up Warding Bludgeon. I do really like to play Smite and Arcane Vortex for all of these buffs that they provide to your teammates. And better together versus Human Shield. This is going to make you take damage from your teammates, although it will reduce incoming damage overall, but probably safer just to play for the sort of small AoE heal this provides. Again, for further tips and tricks, any specifics on this, I would just look at the PvP Advanced Guide in terms of what we play there. I don't think you play Elemental Band with this setup, so I would just go for your good old hearty Sacred Healing Breeze Ring, and then you pick up Endless Thirst as your artifact, And then the amulet, again, is going to change depending on what protection, and that's what sort of damage type you're going into. So the mutated dungeons, or whatever weapon you see the most in PvP, you want to run a protection perk to counteract that. And finally, friends, I wanted to go over my settings and give some general tips and tricks when it comes to healing in New World Aeternum. So if you go to the cogwheel up in the top right, we go to settings, and then we go to game. Scroll down a bit, we can find our healing settings. And this is what I play with. I find it to be the most natural for me. Again, you might want to play around with things to see what works, but we keep targeted healing on. If you are going to play with Sacred Orb and Beacon, you might want to take targeted healing off, so you can just chuck it into the sort of general masses rather than locking it to somebody. I take camera follows lock target off. I don't like it when the camera does its own thing. I like to be in control of the camera. Same with camera aim retargeting. Sticky lock is off. Lock camera to target when healing. I do keep this one on. If you have it off, I feel like it makes the targeted healing kind of funky. The swap enemy and ally target lock input with life staff, I keep that off. Group mode, I play with it on, but you can set a keybind to toggle group mode on and off so you can heal people outside of your group. That's probably something you want to set up. Again, I don't know if that keybind is available for controller. I'm sorry, controller players. The settings for controller for healing, I'm not entirely sure on. Maybe we can play a bit more. If anybody does have any good healing settings with a controller, be a saint and drop those in the comments down below. You would be much, praised or whatever. I'll definitely pin that comment if anybody has anything they can recommend. But yeah, this is basically everything off when it comes to healing. I have lost it. Where is it? Healing. Yeah, everything off other than the lock camera target to healing, and then group mode on, group only, and raid on. But again, you might want to experiment with these, and you also want to consider setting up the keybind to turn group mode on and off as well. So mine is currently set to the minus key, which is a button that I can press on the side of my mouse. I use I have a mouse with like lots of buttons on the side of it, and I use these to target my party members, so that's how we have it set up there. Like I say, with controller things, you're gonna have to get a bit creative there. Probably just take targeted healing off, and then just play with Sacred Orb Splash, Sacred Orb Beacon, just not playing a targeted heal effectively. Now when it comes to actually healing itself, one thing to be aware of in PvE, and it also kind of works in PvP, is you're often going to find the situation where the tank runs in and they get aggro of the melee enemy. So let's say this sort of cactus bush over here is the melee, and they'll start fighting on over there, and then there'll be an archer that gets aggroed, and because you're healing the tank, then the tank's not generating threat because nobody's attacking it. The archer then starts attacking you because healing generates threat. Now the way that you can deal with this, because what you'll find a lot of healers do is they just stand here and they keep on healing and they're taking damage and stuff. You could just drop a heal on yourself, but that's going to be a bit of a waste. You could drink a potion. Generally, that is the play. By the way, friends, if you are taking damage yourself, drink a potion. Use your heals on your teammates. Use potions for yourself. You can't use a potion to heal a teammate. So use potions for yourself, use heals on your teammate. But yeah, this archer can get a bit problematic for a while, especially on higher level mutations or in higher level PvE. But what you can do is simply just go line of sight. So if we go over here, keep putting our heals on our teammates, but we hide behind a rock, the archer has to come close. And hopefully we're in a situation where, the tank can be kind of nearby. So in the case of the tank actually fighting over here, if we want to make sure that that archer gets aggroed onto them, I just simply go and run, pop my heal down over here, and then just wait for the archer, because again, they're coded to try and get line of sight on you. So this guy's going to run over, and he'll run through the tank in that case, and then probably get caught up in the AoE. So you can kind of manipulate the enemy AI just by hiding behind a wall effectively. And this kind of works in PvP as well. Just hiding behind a wall will prevent you from getting shot at by bows and muskets and fire staffs and all of that stuff. One of the tips to be aware of is you can sort of do this... It's almost like an animation cancel where you charge up a heavy attack, and then after the heavy, you immediately fire off your orb or beacon. This is kind of not really a really big deal, but sometimes I use it for a damage burst like that, and then this. So as soon as the heavy attack leaves, you then immediately follow it up with the orb or beacon just to do a bit of extra damage. So yeah, you can get a bit of burst there. One other thing, we covered it a few times throughout this video, whenever you put a heal down, always try and dodge beforehand. That will activate your bend light bonus, which then increases your outgoing healing by 20%. So before any heal, ideally you want to get the bend light bonus. Sometimes you might want to go for a heavy attack as well to get into Intensify. That's going to be another 10% healing. I think trying to get 2 or 3 stacks of healing before Intensify is going to be a bit too much, but yeah, usually trying to dodge heavy and then put the heal down. That's going to get you 30% more healing there. Yeah, 20% from the dodge and then 10% from the heavy for the Intensify. So that can be a pretty big deal there. So try and dodge and also do a heavy before applying heals. Again, the heavy is negotiable. Don't always have to do that. And another tip I would say is try and start with Sacred Ground if you can, because Sacred Ground obviously increases the healing of everything else by 50%. So you want to do Sacred Ground first, so every subsequent heal after that is then going to be 50% stronger. Sometimes if your opponent, if you've got like a teammate that's just missing a little bit, they need a little top up, obviously you don't need to do Sacred for that. So there is going to be a bit of the situation dictates what you do. But typically when it comes to actually like, a proper fight, setting up and getting the heals ready, dodge Sacred Ground and then follow up with the heals after that one. One of the things to be aware of is New World, when it comes to healing, does like a snapshot mechanic. So whatever your outgoing healing buff is at the time, that's how much healing you'll get. So if I dodge roll, and then I get the 20% increase in healing here, and then I put down Sacred Ground, even though this is about to fall off of here, this 20% extra healing, the Sacred Ground still retains that outgoing healing bonus because it remembers what you had at that moment in time. So at the time where you cast the heal, that's how much extra healing it gets, if that makes sense. So we could also show it with like Intensify, where I get the 10% extra healing here. Now, if I switch weapon and then switch away, I'm not going to have that 10% extra healing, but if I attack and then I drop Sacred and then I switch weapon, I lose my healing buffs, I switch back, but it doesn't matter because the healing of the Sacred Ground was at the time of casting, so any healing buffs that I have there is when it's recorded. One exception to this rule, just to make things a little bit confusing, is Fortifying Sacred Ground. So Fortifying Sacred Ground increases armor of your allies by 17% whenever it heals them. This one does slowly fade away, so I'll try and demonstrate this. It's going to be have to take a bit of damage here. So if I go ahead and put a Sacred Ground down, and I get my, by stepping into it, we will get the Fortifying Sacred Ground effect. There it is there, and you can see it's continuously staying. As soon as we step out of the Fortifying Sacred Ground, it starts to wear off. It's timing down, but if we step in, we can sort of like top it back up. There we go, we get the 5 seconds of Fortify again. Now, one thing to be aware of is when you weapon swap, that buff also goes away, but it doesn't immediately go away. And I'll demonstrate that one here. So if we go ahead and we pop down the Sacred Ground, and then I stand inside of it, and then I weapon swap over to my Void Gauntlet, you can see it does slowly start to time down, but if I weapon swap back, it then kicks back in again. So what I'm trying to demonstrate here, in maybe an overly convoluted way, you kind of want to switch back to your life staff roughly once every 5 seconds, just so you can maintain that Fortifying Sacred Ground. It's not the be-all end-all. A 17% Fortify is nice, but it's not something you need to permanently maintain. But realistically, you do want to try and switch back to the life staff once every 5 seconds, just so you can refresh that Fortifying Sacred Ground. So once again, Sacred, step in it, weapon swap, you can see it starts to time down, but if we switch back to the life staff, it then reapplies and kicks in again. And as long as they're receiving healing, it'll keep going back to that 5 seconds. One other thing that I want to mention briefly with healing, and I think this is something that maybe comes with time, is not underestimating how much you can get from Blissful Touch. So just by spamming light attack into a bunch of teammates, sometimes these can be healing for like upwards of 1,000, like just going through your teammates. I was doing an outpush rush earlier, I was just spamming this through a crowd of players, and each one was healing for like 950. It could also trigger the Healing Breeze proc as well, so yeah, sometimes just dodge rolling and spamming light attacks through your teammates can be a pretty good way to top them up. Obviously, it can be tricky if they're on the move, because you can't like, consistently track them all the way through with the light attacks. But yeah, I think that's another thing that is maybe a bit underappreciated when it comes to life staff, is just sometimes just doing default light attacks can actually be pretty good healing, provided it's passing through your teammates. And with that all said, friends, I think that is going to do it for the for this video. It's probably gone far longer than I wanted it to. As always, I try and aim for like a 30, maybe 40-minute video, and this one probably getting close to an hour. I do believe we covered most of the important stuff when it comes to healing there. If there's anything I missed, I'll let you guys know in the comments down below. And by all means, if you guys have any other wisdom that you want to share with your friends about healing that you've learned through New World Aeternum, go ahead and drop that wisdom in the comments down below. If you've got any further questions, you can hop in on the stream as well. I'm streaming New World Aeternum pretty much every day, and we try to maintain a high level of interaction with the chat, so I'm trying to read questions all the time. Sometimes I'll be doing like some PvP, or we'll be doing the Hive of Gorgons. It's a bit harder to read chat, but yeah, generally we'll be able to answer your questions over there. And we mentioned it briefly during the PvE section, but we also have all of the guides that you see for this video available on Discord as well. So my New World build section, we've got the medic build, which is for PvP. So this is the Life Staff and Rapier. We have our Sage build, which is for PvE. That's Life Staff and Void Gauntlet. And I will also be updating the Cleric build, which is what I call Life Staff and Flail as well. So this is not currently updated at time of recording, but we will be going ahead and, you know, updating this with all of the perks and good stuff in there as well, including attributes, weapon master, etc. So links to the Discord in the description down below. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. As always, if you have, consider leaving a like, subscribing for more Baggins and more New World Aeternum content, and I'll catch you guys all in the next video.